Good afternoon and welcome to Marketing Live for Thursday, September 24th, 2015. Marketing Live is part of the Higher Ed Live Network, a series of professional development, web shows, and podcasts which are always free and accessible to you in the archives at higheredlive.com and on iTunes. The Higher Ed Live Network offers viewers direct access to the best and brightest minds in education and allows viewers to share knowledge and participate in discussions around the most important issues in the industry. I'm Rob Zinkin. I have the privilege to serve as Associate Vice President for Marketing at Indiana University, serving our campuses around the great state of Indiana, including here at our flagship campus in Bloomington, where it has been a beautiful week. And I invite you to be part of our broadcast this afternoon by sharing your insights, asking your questions, and you can do that via the Higher Ed Live hashtag on Twitter. Also, you can receive weekly updates with live show dates and times by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter, and that will arrive in your inbox every Monday and get you set for the week. Today's show would not be possible without our partners from mStoner and FormStack. Higher Ed Live is produced by mStoner, a marketing and communications firm that works with education institutions on branding, strategy, web design, and more. Download mStoner's new ebook, 6 Principles of Information Architecture on Higher Ed Websites, which includes mStoner's 6-principle approach to information architecture, best-in-class higher ed examples, and a chance to win a seat at mStoner's 3-part webinar series, IA. We're tweeting out a link where you can download the ebook for free. FormStack is an online form builder and your go-to tool for higher ed website conversions. FormStack makes it easy for marketers to create branded, mobile-ready web forms without writing code, build donation forms, application forms, event registrations, and more with the web's only Section 508 compliant form builder. Interact with your audiences on social media using FormStack's Facebook tab or social media autofill features. For even more conversions, use FormStack's robust analytics data to refine your form. FormStack also partners with popular marketing applications so you can nurture your leads more effectively. Visit formstack.com to learn more about the ways FormStack can double your response rates and increase conversions today. So thanks again to both mStoner and FormStack. Well, today we're going to discuss the B-School brand and better understand the opportunities and the challenges of business school brands. And I hope this discussion will be beneficial for higher ed marketers in general, in addition to those who work at business schools, as well as those working at named academic units. So let's meet our guests. We have 2 seasoned marketers with a wealth of experience, both inside and outside of higher education. First, Peter Ashley. Peter is Director of Marketing Communications for the Mendoza College of Business at the University of Notre Dame. Before joining Notre Dame in 2014, Peter was Director of Marketing and Communications at the Robinson College of Business at Georgia State University. He also served in senior corporate communications roles at SunTrust Bank and Bank of America. Peter, welcome.
Thank you for having me.
And I know web shows are nothing new to you because you host the Mendoza Dialogues, a great way to showcase the accomplishments of your faculty and alumni. So how about taking just a moment to share a bit about those?
Well, we started, the idea for the program came from our alumni team who wanted to find a new way to engage alumni by doing what you said and highlight those faculty accomplishments and really create some thought leadership pieces that we could share ultimately with alumni, prospective students, and other interested parties. So the Mendoza Dialogues is a video series basically that we tape. We have faculty members, we have alumni, and then we make that available to alumni and to prospects and post it on our website. We're looking to do maybe 6 a year. So far we've done about 4 of them, and they're going well. They're a lot of fun to do. And when I was 10 years old, I dreamed of being a talk show host, and I didn't know it was going to actually happen. So it's fun.
That's great. Well, thanks. Welcome also to Angela Bostick. Angela is Chief Marketing Officer for the Guzweta Business School at Emory University, where she has served in multiple roles there since 2009, including Director of Corporate Relations, Assistant Dean, and Associate Dean. Previously, Angela worked for the Atlanta Falcons as Marketing Manager and as Manager of Retail Marketing and Merchandise. Angela, great to have you on the show as well.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
And I must add that your Twitter handle must rank among the best higher ed administrators like a Bostick. I think
Let's be clear. I have to give all my credit to my staff. There was a pool going around the office for what it should be when I created my handle, and that one won hands down.
Well, that is impressive. And I have to ask, having worked for the Falcons, are you a Atlanta Falcons fan?
I am a Falcons fan. I'm a deep football fan, but I am a Falcons fan, and they're making me very proud this year. So.
Yeah, well, we have lots of new Falcons fans here with Indiana University's Tevin Coleman.
Oh, yeah.
Now the starting running back.
I bet you do. I bet you do.
Yes, absolutely. Well, before we jump into the topic, I like giving listeners an opportunity to get to know you a little bit better. So I'll ask if you could share something about your professional journey that we might not pick up from your official bio, any specific experience or something that has had a lasting impact on you and your work. So, Peter, let's start with you.
Sure. One of the things that I'd like to do is be involved in different aspects of communication, and one of them is humor. So I love a good joke, a good one-liner in a meeting, and get a good laugh. And so for years, people have told me, "Oh, you should do stand-up comedy." Foolish that I believe that, but I went. And ironically, actually, the first class I took in stand-up comedy was at Emory. When I was working there, when I was at Anderson Consulting, I did a class there, performed in a club, and then when I was in Charlotte, I did another class on comedy, live comedy, and did another performance in a live club. And it was a tremendous amount of fun. And I will tell you that it is much harder to get a laugh in a room when people basically are sitting there saying, "Make me laugh. This is what I came for." So it's a completely different experience. And during the 10-week course, we had to refine our skit or our comedy, and we had to repeat the same jokes to the same people every night, and no one would laugh because they'd heard it all before. And you'd have to just trust when the instructor said, "Oh, that's going to get a big laugh." You're like, "I hope so. I have no idea." So it was fun, but what I learned from it was be very concise in your writing and in your communications, because when you do the joke, when you write a joke, they would always come to you and say, "Make that shorter, shorten it, take out more words," and they called it "get to the funny." Mm-hmm. And it was quite interesting to learn that, and I apply that in my writing and my other communications in the sense that get to the point, keep it short, unlike this answer. But it's very important, and it was a lot of fun, and it helped me learn to do that a little bit better.
Okay, excellent. Well, feel free to let the one-liners fly during our time together today. So, Angela, what about you? Any additional insight on your story and professional journey?
Yeah, so it kind of has a good follow-up for Peter's. I was lucky when I was in college to get a chance to study with the poet laureate Rita Dove at UVA, where I was a student, and took the class because I wanted to have an opportunity to study with somebody of that magnitude. Didn't quite know what I was getting into. I was a novice when it came to writing, and was in this class with students who were studying from all over the world to kind of learn and hone their skills. And I think one of the big takeaways for me, it kind of mirrors what Peter was mentioning and kind of getting to the point. It's being able to make sure that what you say has lasting impact with individuals, right? Choose your words carefully. Make sure you meter your responses, and kind of, as you're discussing with individuals, be careful about the language you choose, because that language tends to convey a lot more than a single word. So I've tried to carry that through. It's hard when you're in marketing and you're in education. A lot of times we put a lot of things into a very small package. But where possible, when I'm working on a campaign or working on any kind of communication, I'm looking to figure out what's that last sentence or what's that last part I want you to take away that really has full impact. And if you heard nothing else, you get that part.
Okay. Well, I know that you're both seasoned marketers in the higher ed space, but as I mentioned, you both came from outside of higher education and have that experience as well. So I'm curious how that has influenced your work, being outside of higher ed first, how that's influenced your work and perhaps your point of view at your respective institutions.
Yeah.
And Angela, if you want to start with this one.
Sure. So I think you mentioned I spent my time before I came to higher ed working in the NFL, and I, to this day, still get great questions from folks who say, "You went from the NFL to education. Like, what kind of transition is that?" And I tell people it's a far more common move in terms of similarities than there are differences. Your faculty are like your coaches. You know, you have a deep expertise and understanding on a topic that is your focus and your life, right? And it is a detailed thing that you know more about than anyone else. And you really get a chance to spend time with true experts. I mean, people in their field who are just phenomenal in what they know and what they do. And also, you know, kind of your athletes are a lot like your students. You know, there's so much talent, and you're cultivating them, and you're watching them be built into successful individuals. So while we don't have the mega budgets that you find in the NFL and in some of the sporting worlds, I get to market an amazing product, if you will, in higher ed that I'm as proud about as I was about, you know, marketing the NFL. And so my experience there taught me a lot about the similarities there, but also there's a lot of passion in the NFL, right? People are deeply tied to their teams in the same way that people are deeply tied to their collegiate experiences. And so understanding the emotional background when somebody is choosing a college, when somebody is recalling their collegiate experience, when somebody is making a reference to someone else about why they should send their child somewhere or why they should study in one place versus another, you have to remember that those years that you spend there are unlike any other. And so it's a really important point to understand the emotional connection behind it. And I carry that from my years in sports directly over. And then prior to working in sports, I had the privilege to learn a bit in working at Procter & Gamble. And that's just, you know, kind of marketing at its best, right? So you're in a company that doesn't just teach you things, it sets the trends. And carrying over that knowledge of how you look at consumer interests, how you follow their behavior, how you take insights there and turn it into products that can really drive and impact people's lives. Just all of that rolls together, and I find myself using parts of both of those spans of my life almost daily.
Great, and I value those parallels that you mentioned between athletics and higher education, and I've always worked in higher ed administration, but I started in athletics administration. So I think those comparisons between a dean and a head coach, or a program chair and a head coach, they're many. Well, thank you. And Peter, you have some different corporate experience to bring to the table. Anything from before coming to higher ed that you can share? Yeah,
sure. And one thing I'll just say is that I get the best of both worlds because I've got Notre Dame football and higher ed. So I've kind of got both working for me at the same time.
You're jabbing at me. We don't have any football down here.
But some big differences. I mean, I think Angela's exactly right. There are so many things that are parallel because it's just the customer is different, the players are different, but you're still trying to convey a message, and you're still trying to get people to take action. You're still trying to build your brand, or at least communicate your brand more clearly. So I think there's a lot of parallels. But one thing is different, certainly at the banks, that no one has tenure, so that really affects things that happen. Certainly the banks and corporate in general, they think day to day and maybe week to week, and it's always in crisis mode. So I found it difficult to think long term, difficult to think strategically. And so I find in higher ed you still have those sort of short term things that have to happen, but there's more latitude because the cycles are longer. Things don't change just instantly, like a stock price. So you've got that time to think strategically, to plan a little bit. You know, sure, it gets redirected, but I like that ability to have more time to think strategically.
Okay, great. So we know more about you, so let's get to know your business schools some more as well, and to help provide context for your perspective. So if you could give us some brief background on your schools, the elevator speech, if you will, and now that I can appropriately pronounce Goizueta Business School, let's start there, Angela.
Absolutely, thank you. So the Goizueta Business School is one of the nation's first business schools. We are getting close to celebrating 100 years, started in 1919. The school has got a portfolio of MBA programs and business programs as a whole. We have an undergraduate BBA program, 1-year and 2-year MBA programs, an evening MBA program, a weekend and a modular MBA program, and then a PhD program and a suite of executive education courses. So in short, we've got a lot of different offerings that satisfy a lot of different audiences. We're located in the amazing city of Atlanta. That gives us a great touch point of a lot of business and industry. Atlanta's #3 for Fortune 500 headquarters. So we've got a lot of activity and business-minded individuals here, and people from other places who want to be in a business-minded city like Atlanta when they study. Our dean is celebrating a year of her time here, Dean Erica James. She's been a fantastic leader, a head coach, if you will, of our institution, and she brings a wealth of knowledge with her. And the school has really been flourishing in the space of experiential learning and leadership, kind of two big areas where we've not just kind of set the bar, but we continue to innovate. Experiential learning is woven through the fabric of everything we do at the school in all of our areas. And leadership is an important way that we bring applied learning to life. Things like 360 reviews, after action reports, the ability for students to do assessments and real-time feedback drives home the importance of everything that we teach. So across the board, as a top 20 institution for a number of years, I think we are a well-set and well-placed player within the market, and definitely one that continues to drive and innovate in the space.
Great. Thanks, Angela. And Peter, tell us more about the Mendoza College of Business.
Sure. And first, I'll have to agree with Angela. Emory is a great school, and she's obviously a great marketer because she packed in every great point was in a 2-minute, which was terrific. And it's absolutely true because I used to live in Atlanta, and it's a great school. Mendoza is almost the same age. We turned 100 in 1921 is when we were founded.
Yep.
And our big focus is this whole notion of ethics-based education. Business is a positive force in the world. We're getting more now into impact investing, which we can speak to later. But now if you look at a business school, everyone talks about, hey, we should be making an impact. We should be making positive change happen. That wasn't the case 100 years ago. Our founding dean, Cardinal O'Hara, said that the primary function of commerce is service to mankind. And he talked about that business is based on divine principles, and if those principles are adhered to, it truly can be a service to mankind. That is not what you typically heard from business school 100 years ago, and that is still the focus of Mendoza. So the students we attract have a deep desire, basically, to serve and give back, and it doesn't mean you can't go to Wall Street. You want to do it with an ethical framework, and so we offer a wide array of programs as well. We have an executive MBA program that's one based in South Bend and one based in Chicago. We have a 1-year and a 2-year traditional full-time residential MBA, a 1-year Master of Science in Management for non-business majors coming right out of college who need that year to sort of refine their skills, take their liberal arts background, and get a good job with it, and see how that liberal arts background can really pay off. And they need a business degree to be able to speak that language and be ready to do that. We have an accountancy program as well. And the original program, actually, that started the college was the Master of Nonprofit Administration, which it really focuses on higher ed people in religious institutions, anyone in a nonprofit space who wants to learn how to manage as well as serve. And then finally, of interest, we added 2 new programs this past year, 1-year Masters of Science programs, a finance program and a business analytics program, both 1-year programs for working people based in Chicago, which is increasingly becoming a big hub for a lot of our activity because obviously it's a very big market and it's very close to South Bend, relatively speaking. So Mendoza is obviously very solid. The undergrad program has been ranked #1 for a number of years, and we're doing a great job, hopefully getting the message out, attracting quality students, and like Emory, protecting the good brand that we have.
Well, thank you both for painting a concise and compelling picture of your business schools. And I'd really like now to delve into the work that you're doing and what you have done there to build, to manage, to strengthen your business school's brand, and where you are in that process. And Peter, I know you have led a rebranding process at Mendoza, so let's begin with the work that you've done at Notre Dame.
Sure. Notre Dame and the business school here has a very solid reputation, and what we're about is very clear to prospective students and to our stakeholders, that we're about this notion of business as a force for good and servants in the world. And the branding exercise that we've undergone is really to tell the full story of what our brand can do for prospective students and for others in contact with us. So the ethical framework is, and the mission of the college is always going to be there, and that's what drives us. But what we've done is we've been using this phrase, this tagline called legendary advantage for a while that we've worked on to really communicate the tie to Notre Dame, which is so important, the fact that we have this renowned focus on ethics and business for good, our faculty are outstanding, and we have an alumni network that I would put up against any alumni network for its devotion to each other, to its commitment to Notre Dame. And repeatedly when I talk to students and people, I hear, why did you come to Notre Dame? I came because there's a focus on ethics. I came because you have just an incredible alumni network that supports you like a family. I came because of the fact that, hey, there's something magical about stepping on the campus of Notre Dame. So that legendary advantage messaging is really sort of how we're going to be going to market to really emphasize all that we offer and the full breadth of the brand to our stakeholders. So it's in our website, it's in our advertising, and we're going to be looking to build that out more because we think that really captures, in just 2 words, I think, what we're about.
Excellent. And Angela, the focus of your brand strategy work at Emory with the business school there.
Absolutely. Before I go, I got to say I do love the tag legendary advantage. It is a quintessential great in 2 words, but also really drives home what is amazing about Notre Dame. I think what is amazing about Emory, and if you talk to Gosweda grads and Emory grads, and the beauty of both of their experiences being very similar, is the experience. When you are here and you are a part of the Emory community, from the minute you join it to the long after you've left it, the experience is something that is perpetual, is constantly affecting you. And we say all the time, if we can get you to step foot on campus, we pretty much have you as a student. It's a great place to be, and it's electric environment, right? And it's an environment that is really important for you to feel as a student. I call it a crucible sometimes, a place where a lot of activity takes place, but you also see that environment is supportive. So a lot of the branding work we've been doing is to figure out how do we take that experience that you have when you're here and back it up for a student in the pipeline. How do I let a prospective student know what their life will be like as a student here? How do I convey the importance of having faculty who are both accomplished and available? Right? How do I make it clear the value of being in a city where industry is in your hallway all the time, up and down, in your classrooms, providing projects, completely being involved on a going basis? How do I talk about the importance of not just getting a job, but of really understanding your career trajectory, because you know that you're strong in your skills and developed in your leadership? So much of what we're trying to build in our branding are ways in which to let that be seen. We could do a lot of work on our own around that, right? We could spend a lot of money and a lot of time, if we had it, if you will, right? But in reality, the best thing to do is to let that be seen. So a lot of our work lately has been in curating what's going on here on campus. How do we take things like our social feeds from all across our students, our alumni, our faculty, and curate that experience for individuals on the outside as almost an unfiltered look into what we are? How do we take our experiences and make them accessible before you get here? What kind of chats can we have? What kind of events can we host? Which ways can we have you interact with our alumni? How do we make our alumni magazine able to communicate just the distinct difference between our graduates and our network? I said before, I love the words that are there, because I think that Notre Dame has encompassed a lot of their experience in those 2 words. We're building right now to figure out what are the words, because that experience that we currently have exceeds a lot of what I'm able to condense down. So choosing to not condense but to curate so that there's more of an access to that unfiltered experience.
Robert, can I say one thing about that? I think Angela is exactly right, and I think what's interesting about Emory and Notre Dame, and really branding in general, if you think about it, you have to it has to ring true when you talk about your brand. A lot of people will make up something that sounds so great, but it doesn't ring true.
Yeah.
And when Angela talks about Emory's experience, and it all rings true because of that school, and to start with that core truth, basically. Now, you can always be aspirational, but that core truth has to ring true for what you're doing, and then you can build from that. And the tagline, at the end of the day, is sort of a tagline. and it's the messaging around that, and it's the pillars that build that up. And it sounds like you guys have all the pillars. You know your brand, you know what you're about, and it's kind of how do we condense that down to communicate it very, very quickly.
Yeah, condense and disseminate.
There.
Yeah, condense and disseminate, because the important part there is, and I agree with your thought. The important part is authentic is wonderful, but disseminating authentic can be daunting in a lot of ways, right? How do I share with you the unfiltered version of Gazweta so that it rings true with you? And that's an important fact. Both of us, both schools, we have small class sizes in a lot of places, in a lot of ways. Part of that is because it's a fit environment, right? And it has to fit and feel authentic to you. We are very intentional when we choose our classes, as I know you all are at Notre Dame, in that you want to make sure that individuals not just like what they hear, but fit with what they hear and fit with the kind of way that our environment works. And so a lot of the brand is filtering in and out, making sure people understand what it's like before they're here, so that it can be attractive to the right people.
And we're very lucky. We're very lucky because we work for great brands. Yeah. And our job is to steward that, to build it, to disseminate it, to make it appealing to a younger audience. And it's a privilege. But it's funny. I had no connection to Notre Dame before I came here, and even without a connection, when I saw that dome, it was like, wow, this place is cool. I mean, it was great. It's a great experience. And when you of course watch Rudy, and you get in the spirit of it. You go to a football game, and it's great, and you walk the campus, and it's wonderful. And the students here are special, and their approach to things is different, and they like Angel said a moment ago, getting them to campus for a lot of people really seals the deal. Now the outerwear you need is quite different from in South Bend than Atlanta.
That is true.
Other than that, it's a great.
Virtually the same, other than jackets.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, Peter, that all rings true to me. My wife is a Notre Dame alumna, so all those things about the experience, stepping on campus, absolutely. And I know all of our institutions have those unique elements of the experience. And it's something we were just in a discussion here about really owning those, because we're always focused on differentiation and finding those points of differentiation. And while that's critical, really reminding ourselves that we need to own who we are and not necessarily look to be something we're not. But what are those assets, unique or not? But what are they where we truly excel? And let's own them, own every ounce of them. Well, we know about the changing landscape in higher education on many fronts, and it seems like there are many parallels to the challenges that you face in marketing and business school. Certainly, competition is at an all-time high. It seems that competitors are spending much more than ever before. The value of an MBA gets questioned at times. MBA full-time programs have seen lower enrollments in recent years. So how are you dealing with these issues, and what other challenges are you facing in your work? And I'll open that up to either of you.
Sure, I'm happy to take that one first. I think, and I would love to hear Angela's thoughts and see if it's some of that sounds the similar challenges. You nailed a few of them with the perception of a declining market, although apparently GMAC just released a report recently that said applications are up. You got that too. So that's good news. What the general trend has been fewer GMAT takers, which is, of course, the leading indicator of what you think you're going to get in your MBA program. Internationally, however, it's going up, and which it's a great pool of candidates. So sometimes it's trickier to get placement, which is a big part of our draw. Is we get very, very, very high placement numbers for our graduates. So one of the things is to try to make the message as compelling as possible, to target your audience as closely and tightly as possible, and to have other programming that might speak to a candidate who either is questioning an MBA or doesn't want to, can't quit their job for a year or 2 years. So these specialized masters are becoming more popular in general across the market, and it's a shorter time frame generally, but it's a specialized degree. So there's always people who want that full MBA, and hopefully that number is growing again. But it really is just making sure your message is clear, you're targeting the right students, and you're giving as many opportunities and options as you can for students to really connect with you. But it is very competitive, and it is a challenge to make sure that you're staying ahead of that competitive nature. But it's a great time to do it because now that we've started to see hopefully an uptick in MBA or GMAT takers, a lot of exciting things are happening.
Absolutely. I would echo that. I think the competition is increasing, and I think there's a lot of people who say there's, defining the value of an MBA. And I think in question, honestly, all of the value of education is under attack. And really, we have to do a better job of explaining what does higher education do for a student. As a parent, validating that for, paying for a child. As an adult, going to graduate school to get a degree, I want to make sure that that's the right thing to do. So I don't think that's uniquely a challenge for business school as much as it is making sure all of education can fully answer that question. I think a question that we're dealing with at Gazweta, and one that's exciting to me, quite frankly, is what is the definition of business, right? And when you listen to Peter talk about ethics and looking at careers that add value to the world and value in the scope, there are a lot of times people don't associate business with those things, right? Healthcare, is that the realm of business? Nonprofit, is that the realm of business? When you go to law school, you become a lawyer, and it's not necessarily as clear when you go to business school what necessarily you're going out to do, and that can be a good thing or a bad thing. So we need to widen the aperture for what that looks like for individuals. They need to understand the span of what a business degree can do for them. At Emory, our undergrad students complete 2 years in our undergrad liberal arts program first before they come into the business school, and that is intentional for a lot of reasons. First and foremost, that they have a complete experience, and that's really important so that they can see the realm of the liberal arts background we're discussing and then apply that to business. And it makes our students infinitely more well-rounded. There's just so much more value you can derive when you have the social sciences and the ologies and the arts and literature applied to finance and supply chain and all these very specialized areas. So as we're looking to help people understand what is business in the future, we have to be willing to sort of change what that looks like on our own scale. Peter discussed some of those one-year master's programs, and I think there's a lot of interest in the market to figure out how do we address the interest for business degrees without the time or the appetite to leave their job or the ability to kind of get away and be all the way in South Bend or in Atlanta. Online options are coming available, short courses, a number of things to kind of feed the beast. Those of us who have these brick and mortar institutions are working to make sure that business stays salient, but also that all of our offerings can address the entire marketplace that's looking.
Yeah, I think those are extremely good points. And I think business, at the end of the day, everything really is business. So that's the irony.
Yeah, it is.
And even people who don't have a business background, who hit the job market and realize, wow, this is how the world actually operates. It's a critical thing. And when the recession hit, of course, that really just had businesses on the defensive. People thought business was just a bad thing because it had caused all these problems. But really, there's an increasing realization, I think, certainly in business schools, is that business is going to be the source of a lot of the solutions to the problems that we face. I mean, next week, Notre Dame has a 2-day conference on climate investing, which is specifically looking at how can businesses and investment drive innovation that's going to help not only handle the effects of climate change, potentially change it, but also prepare to live in it.
Yeah.
And it's that innovation and that business and that investment that's going to make it happen. We also talk about impact investing at Mendoza, and it's kind of a new term for a concept that's been around a while, but it's this idea of, hey, let's go solve the problem of clean water in another country, but let's do it as a business that is sustainable, not as a charity that is not sustainable. And it's just looking at solving critical world problems through business. And I think that combination of things is going to be where a lot of solutions lie. And as people realize that it probably won't be the government to fix a lot of the problems, that we can help do that. And by educating students who get that, who care about that and then turn them out into the world with a mindset to solve big problems with an ethical framework to serve the greater good, I think we've got some real potential to make some things happen. And so the reputation, quote unquote, of business, I think will turn around as people see that it is in fact the purpose of it is good, can be noble, and when it's executed with the right values and the right focus, is definitely something noble.
Yeah, I would add to that the idea that if you run any industry, you have to use business to run it. And so when you talk about things around climate control or things around the right kind of impact investing, we have a center at Gazweta that is a social enterprise at Gazweta. And it takes the lens of business and applies it to these macro issues around the world in areas so that you are taking tested and true business principles and applying them to the kind of challenges that have in the past caused long-standing poverty or have caused disparity in pay. They were working down in Nicaragua with coffee farmers and growers to help get not just a livable wage, but the appropriate wage for those individuals to make almost like a coffee index. And the idea of taking that research and applying it to an industry that, a lot of us, I should say, drink coffee every day and yet don't understand the industry behind it. You can do good business and do good business, and that's an important thing to explain to people because that distinction was tested almost a decade ago and wasn't always in place before that. So I think that the breadth of business is a good thing for business, making sure that people understand entertainment is business, right? Healthcare is business. There are all these spaces that are fundamentally related to business, and that acumen can help us get better at those things. Not just that government won't fix it, but government alone might not be able to fix it. There might need to be true business leaders who step up and say, let's attack this problem from multiple angles and see where we figure out how to better deliver a product.
Just a quick reminder, if any viewers have tips to share or questions for our guests, feel free to tweet those using the Higher Ed Live hashtag. And Angela and Peter, you both talked about your institutions, Emory and Notre Dame, and let's hear some about how that business school brand fits into the larger institution's brand and the overall institutional brand architecture. Where does the business school fit?
So I'll tackle that first at Emory. Oh, sorry, Peter.
No, go ahead.
I'll tackle that first at Emory because we have a lot of history between the business school and the larger university, and I think that it's a relationship that is important to be in place. And I would love to hear Peter's thoughts on this as well. We go as Emory goes. As Emory succeeds and as Emory thrives, we should be succeeding and thriving. And as a sub-brand of a larger brand, which we are, being in lockstep to the best of our ability is really valuable, right? So I work with my counterparts at Central on a number of things. We are, for all intent and purposes, an internal agency for all of Gazweta, right? My team provides the marketing support for prospective students, for current students, for outreach communication to alumni, to corporations. I am benefited in being able to coordinate with my Central counterparts, if for no other reason than we're singing from the same hymn book, right? That we're talking in the same language. If they're highlighting something, it's beneficial if I'm highlighting it. If we are looking to go out into market, if I'm doing a big campaign, an ad campaign in Atlanta, it's going to benefit the larger university as much as it benefits me, if not more. So we work together pretty regularly. Like I mentioned, Emory is a liberal arts institution, and Gazweta is a business school. We are a pre-professional school. And so we want to work in lockstep to make sure the value of both of those angles of focus are appropriately given, right? We want to make sure that you understand what a liberal arts education can bring to you and what the professional side of business can bring to you. And so we're building to do a lot more of that as we go along. There's always room for improvement for the left and the right hand to be even closer. But I would argue that it's been an area that was definitely a focus of mine when I got here, of not just centralizing our efforts at the business school, but drawing closer to the university so that we do things volume pricing, that we focus on going to the right markets at the same time, tapping and focusing on the right kind of students at the same time. So all of those things are beneficial, and we try to do them as best as possible.
I want to just build on something that Angela just mentioned, which is very important to point out, is the liberal arts focus. You mentioned liberal arts, and Notre Dame is the epitome of the liberal arts institution. It really thrives on that, the discernment, the spirituality aspect, and it's definitely known for liberal arts. And so the business side of it is a different focus in some respects for prospective students and even for the campus. So, but the trick is for us, Mendoza is a named school, and whenever you have a named school, you have to promote that brand and build that brand. The challenge is when you're tied to a university as well known as Notre Dame, it's foolish to go off and try to push a name too much and not tie closely to that mothership. So we very deliberately, we work closely with the university Marcom team and the university leadership. But even in our messaging, which is one of the reasons we are using Legendary Advantage, is to connect closely to Notre Dame because it's such a strong brand. And it will always be what people recognize if they pass a billboard or they look at something or they get a banner ad or something's going to catch them. It's probably going to be the name Notre Dame. And we have to tie closely to that. As we build the Mendoza brand as a business school, it needs to be done with close partnership, much like Angela said, to that home brand. I mean, some business schools, the business school is what is known, and the regular school is not as well known, and they have a different challenge. They don't want to tie as closely sometimes to their home brand because it's not as good. Here, it's Notre Dame is such a strong brand, we have to tie to it closely, and we do that in our messaging, in our brand standards, and in all our work we do, try to stay connected to them.
And Peter, you mentioned the named academic school element, which is not unique to business schools, but let's hear a little bit more about that and other complexities that might come into play when, as you said, you have the brand of the Mendoza name, not just as a business school, but again, other named academic schools and colleges that, because of that lead name, you feel compelled to build a brand around that.
Absolutely. I mean, we know it's going to take time to build. We want to build the brand Mendoza. That is the name of the school. But again, we want to build that closely with Notre Dame because it is such a powerful brand, and we're so intricately woven together. We have to build that together. I think the challenge is that we're the only named school on campus. Now there is a new one coming that's been announced, the Keough School for Global Affairs, which is still about a year or two away from having students come in, and that now is going to have, they're going to have similar challenges because again, it's going to be the Keough School at Notre Dame. They're not going to build that name school very quickly if they don't stay very closely woven to Notre Dame. We use the colors, we use the the ND lockup. We make sure that anything we send out does not just say Mendoza, that it is tied to Notre Dame. We don't send things out without the word Mendoza in there because we want to make sure people know we are named school and to honor those commitments to build up that brand. But again, the challenge is simply what's the balance, when you have, and in some cases you have a third level of branding that sometimes, someone wants to have. And you say, okay, well, how do we build 3 brands here? And then that hierarchy and how do you promote it? So it's a challenge to balance that, but fortunately, again, being with such a great school, for me it's easy to see the hierarchy in terms of, hey, we got to lead Notre Dame because someone's going to notice that, and that will ultimately build the Mendoza brand. For example, we changed the website to mendoza.nd.edu. It used to be just business.nd.edu. Now it's mendoza.nd.edu. So we're making sure the name is very prominent, and when people go to that site, they'll build the name, but they know it's Notre Dame.
Yeah. I agree with Peter. One way that we've talked about at Goizueta of building the Goizueta brand, we are named for Roberto C. Goizueta, the late CEO and chairman of the Coca-Cola Company. We are in Atlanta. There is a good reason to believe that individuals know the name when they hear it. He's a 16-year veteran at the helm that did amazing things for Coca-Cola. Ironically, a lot of our students coming in the door now weren't even alive or were very young in the stages in time when Coke did the many things they did under his tutelage. And so what we're looking to do is to build the brand of Goizueta by understanding the brand of the man, right? He is a legacy and a formidable force. He was not just a legendary businessman, but a legendary ethical leader. And what he was able to do for that company, we layer into what we would like that name to mean for our school. So we tie, of course, very closely to the Emory brand. And when we talk about and stress the Goizueta part of our naming, it's so that individuals understand the legacy for whom we work, right? The individual for whom we are named. Not everybody is blessed to have been named by a school, named by a man who you really want to put up, on a very high pedestal. And our namesake is great for that. So we have been doing a lot of educating for the individuals coming in. We've got details about his legacy. We have a core value system throughout our programs that talk about the leadership principles that he espoused. We have a whole sort of engagement process. Actually, one of our application questions in admissions is about his legacy. You watch a short video, you answer a question, and you kind of understand his leadership. All of these things symbolically, but very intentionally, again, build the name and what you think of when you think of Goizueta. And so that extra level of engagement helps us a good deal. We, of course, use our Emory Goizueta as best as we can. Ironically, we have to go through the process that not everybody pronounces our school's name the same way, right? We've almost accepted it to the point of a joke. We let students say it a million ways to Sunday, and then when you start here, we teach it to you the right way. But I do think that the brand and sub-brand is an important thing to manage. Now, when you go into the sub-brand of the sub-brand, to Peter's point, there are programs beneath that. There are centers beneath that. There are institutes and initiatives beneath that. And all of those are sort of fighting for relevance within and below the parent brand. So to the best of your ability, when you make a tiered system that allows them to shine as necessary, that's a lot to manage. Peter and I both have a large portfolio of programs and organizations for a small school, and it's making sure we balance them appropriately so that people hear Emory, hear Goizueta, hear our programs, and those things ladder and line up at all times.
I just want to say quickly that I loved her approach to that and how you're handling Goizueta. I really like that.
Thank you.
The way you're approaching that, I think it's great. Makes a lot of sense.
Yes, kudos to both of you and your work to achieve coherence out of all of that. Institution, college, the named element, and then certainly the individual program brands. No easy task at all. And Peter, I'm interested, you mentioned with Mendoza being the only named academic school at Notre Dame, at least at the present time, how your work compares and contrasts to other school-based, college-based marketers at your institution. And typically, those who are marketing business schools, those who are marketing online programs, are often the most data-driven, the most analytics-oriented. So have you been able to add value, provide leadership to marketing colleagues who are working in other schools at Notre Dame?
It's funny you say that. Recently we had a meeting of all the communications directors for all the colleges at Notre Dame, and ours is, by far, I think, the most complex from a true marketing standpoint. Mm-hmm. A lot of the colleges don't really do marketing per se. Right. Undergrad we don't do really any, and our undergrad business school doesn't need any marketing at all. The law school is the closest in terms of actually trying to get graduate students to come. A lot of the other programs don't have a lot of marketing resources, and it's not as competitive. There's not the same focus on rankings, so it's a very different world for some of the other schools, and I'm interested to hear Angela's thoughts on that if she agrees. But it is different, and when I meet with them, I share kind of what we're doing, and it's sometimes the reaction is they're interested, and it's interesting how different it is in terms of measurement. And the ones that don't require a lot of marketing because they get so many people in the door, it's not as competitive. There's not the same need to measure metrics quite as extensively as we do. And so sharing that focus on, we're going to make some decisions here based on data. I don't want to do a focus group in advance. I can't stand that. I want to see what actually people do, and then make a decision based on that. And then if something's working, keep doing it. If it's not working, get rid of it. And not doing, there's always we've always done it this way in any organization. And I think the business school has a little bit of an advantage because it is, after all, business, and understand the value of a decision based on what actually people are doing and data, and not just either we've done it this way or never questioning, why we're doing it this way. So those other meetings are very interesting to hear how the other colleges approach it. It's just the challenges are very, very different.
Yeah.
Angela feels the same way.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I first got here, I expected there to be more similarity across the colleges, the units, if you will, than differences. But I find that a lot of my experience and the work that I do marketing is based on the competitive environment where business schools live. Medical schools don't advertise. Top medical programs don't necessarily advertise. Law schools haven't done the extensive amount of, digital advertising and full brand campaigns that business schools have been doing for many, many years. And so when we're talking about those things, I tend to find that we have our feet in traditional and non-traditional activities, in campaigns, in tactical strategies. We're soup to nuts involved. And a lot of my former life marketing, and I did in the NFL and I did in consumer packaged goods, is more relevant than the higher ed kind of comparisons across campus. And so you kind of asked earlier, how do those things come back into play? I use a lot of those skills. Focus groups and the kind of way you talk about data. In my former life, when we did consumer behavior and market knowledge, it's wildly valuable when I look at this. This is a business school choice it's a very important decision that we talked about earlier. It's an emotional one. So making sure that you're connecting with your audience in both an emotional and a rational way. I need to know the ROI as much as I need to know how much fun I'm going to have. I need to know about the network and how much help that's going to get me in a career as much as I need to know how much I'll love where I'm going to live and the people that I'm going to go to class with. And that's not a responsibility that a lot of other units on campus have to do, right? You're going to be in med school and you're going to spend 4 years there and it's going to be tough. And we're not going to ask you how much fun you're going to have. Or, conversely, it's undergrad and I want to focus more on what student and campus life is going to look like. And I'm not going to spend a lot of time, in a lot of cases, focusing on what all the career resources are. So we walk a very fine and interesting line as a business school. People want to have both sides of that handled. And then add to that the complexity of an audience that wants more out of business, right? They want to feel more than a career. They want to feel fulfilled. They want to feel like their careers have purpose, like they want to feel like their time at the program has impact. And so a lot of those things to balance, when I talk across the way to nursing or to theology, they don't necessarily have the same challenges. And so we have many dashboards. I'm sure, Peter, you can agree. There are lots of things we measure and we look at. And we have to try to measure, measure twice, cut once, if you will, so that we're doing due diligence before we make decisions. But in the absence of data, I think we would almost drown. There's just a lot of things to consider, and it has to be done with an eye towards what's the best business case.
I think we're all often looking for that magic dashboard when it comes to ROI and metrics. So if there's any insight or detail that you might be able to share in terms of how you go about measuring your success when it comes to the business school's brand.
I would say there's a lot of different ways to measure it. I try to think about the brand and the different efforts that I do specifically before I do them as to who am I trying to impact to do what, right? So, for example, last year we did a fairly massive out-of-home campaign in Atlanta Hartsfield Jackson Airport. We timed it with a very large conference for MBA students that was going to come through the city, and that was an important audience, but it was a sub-audience for the many alumni and business people who travel through the world's busiest airport every day. So if I judged it only on how many prospective students came through and saw that and then applied to my program, it likely would not have been valuable. But if I layer on top of that, how many alumni saw that and puffed with pride and shared it through social media? How many recruiters came through and saw that and remembered to themselves they wanted to add Emory or continue to work with Emory as a institution they recruit from? How many different individuals and parents saw that and wanted to think about their children coming to the program? There's a lot of measurements to be layered into things. So I tend to give myself the responsibility to judge everything each piece of a campaign is meant to affect, and to say, this is the fullness of what it's meant to do. It's a primary need, but there are secondary and tertiary benefits that come from this.
Yeah, I think that was an extremely good assessment of measuring, and it's interesting you mentioned the airport. By the way, if you ever see an ad in Atlanta for Notre Dame, don't kill me, but
I can't even argue. We're the busiest airport. I hear about it all the time.
Yeah. But we took over the station, the Millennium Station in Chicago, which is one of the biggest stations. Yeah. And every surface you could cover with our brand was there. It was completely plastered all over it. It was fantastic. But it's impossible to measure exactly what it did. There's a lot of it's a brand perception. It's a brand awareness piece. I can't tell you, how many people looked at that and went to apply. But we look at based on, hey, was there any change in any of the other things that happened that month? Did we get any more web traffic? Did we run anything else that might have affected the web traffic in addition to this? And just try to look at those things on that kind of piece. But other things, obviously, it's traditional things of web traffic, click rates, all those things that you sort of numerically judge. But for me, and I'm sure it's true for Angela, but we're really held accountable for prospective students, inquiries, how many people are coming in, how many people are expressing interest in the program, how many are coming to events, and that's a critical measure that we're held to. And so all the strategies that we do are designed to do that. And to Angela's point, there are different audiences, and we're going through a process now of taking a step back and looking at all those audiences. And just like Angela said, what are the goals? What do we want those people to do? And then how do we get the message out to help them take that action, all while being true to the brand. But measuring is an ongoing thing. There's always new ways to measure. But our focus is making sure that we're hitting the targets.
Yeah, lead generation is infinitely important, and I think, and I'd be curious to hear, Peter, how you're looking at it. One thing we're trying to assess is, when does it really start? Right?
It never stops.
Right, exactly. It feels like it is an iterative process. Individuals take anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 years to go from inquiry to application. And some of our executive programs, we've got folks who've been in the pipeline 4 or 5 years, and then they pull a trigger. It is not realistic for us to know what made them pull the trigger. Another important thing for us is to try to be mindful of everything we do during the cycle of that experience. When you joined and became an inquiry or became a contact to us, did we make every point of contact where we reached you count? Right? Did we collect information from you at the lead generation stage that we actually used to communicate with you again later? Did you tell me you wanted finance and I talked to you about finance events? Did you say you live in a certain market and I shared with you when we would be there? Did you tell me you had an interest in this industry and I shared a speaker who came from that? It becomes an extremely tactical and targeted process. It's almost hand-to-hand combat. But that is the level of engagement and interest that this audience is looking for. Right? They are looking to feel that you understand them at a profound level. And gone are the days where your website can be a bulletin board, right? Where it can just have everything you need. I'm covetous, Peter, on your new website. I'll say this publicly. You have something that I want. You have this wonderful chart that lets people talk about what they think what they want to do, their background, and you show the kind of programs that they should look at. A lot of times people come because they want to be educated on what they want, right? And so you've got to be a source so individuals can say, yes, I know I want to study business. I have no clue, but I can tell you I have 4 years of work experience. I live in Chicago, and I think I have this background from undergrad. And your chart does a really good job of saying you can apply to anything you want, but here might be a place that looks good for you to start.
Right.
And students will reward you for that. So a lot of what we're looking to do is to say, here is the realm of what's possible, but tell us a little bit more so we can help you to get to what's probable.
Right. And what we just started doing is we had never done an all programs open house before. So the programs would have their own events and draw, a crowd. But we've done 2 now in Chicago with all our programs represented. And there have been many times in that event where someone would come and talk to the 2-year MBA, staff, and then realize, what, really you're suited to the EMBA, and they would walk them over to the EMBA, and then others would go back and forth, and they got the full breadth, and they got the help to think through what program might be a good fit for them, which is terrific for the prospect to be able to feel the connection and to see all what's offered and have help answering questions about it. And to Angela's point, it's that personal touch, it's that engagement, it's that continuing to keep them plugged into the process. I think is critical, and there is no way to judge the time, because a touch point now might result in an application tomorrow or in a year, and it's a challenge to measure that, but it's always important to keep the dialogue open.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, well, this has been fantastic, and I'll wrap up by asking for any closing quick thoughts. And Peter, I know you'll be presenting on this topic at the AMA Symposium in November in Chicago on higher ed, and I like in that session description how you frame it as creating an effective B-school brand to live within and to live beyond the legendary Notre Dame brand. So anything else that you'll be sharing in your presentation at AMA that we haven't touched on yet today?
No, I'll just probably go into more visuals of here's kind of the creative we've been using, here's what's been working, here's some of the messaging that we're building out, and how that messaging ties to various aspects of our brand, as well as as the aspects of Notre Dame that we want to connect to. So it'll be similar points, a little bit more detail on process, on how we work to consolidate the marketing budget, rolled out the new website, in fairly quickly, and tying the messaging and branding, and showing a little bit more of what that looks like and what that process looked like. So I'm excited to do that. I presented to a similar conference in Atlanta in March, and or maybe it was February, but it was a good month to get out of South Bend. But it was a lot of fun, and hopefully the one in November will be fun.
Well, for those who are going back to their desk after watching and back to the grind this afternoon or tomorrow morning, any final recommendations or thoughts? 1 or 2 things that should be top of mind for fellow marketers as they think about marketing for their school, whether that be a business school or just an academic unit in general. Any closing words of wisdom?
I'll go ahead and let Angela have the last word.
I always hear people say, you can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink. I think one thing we miss as marketers is our job is to lead horses to water. We can't make them drink, but we can surely help it, right? We can surely help make sure that they are fully educated on what we offer, that they are able to access more information as they need. That means putting yourself in the shoes of the customer, of the student who's looking to understand what's there, organizing your content so that it's user-friendly, providing insights that somebody might want to ask and doesn't know to ask. So in a lot of ways, you encourage somebody to drink by making it much easier to get there. So if you're not going to help them drink, or make them drink, you can at least give them a straw and make it a little bit easier for them to digest it.
And point them in the right direction, right?
Exactly, absolutely.
Yeah. I would say that people went back to their desks to remember that making decisions about what you're doing is critical. And our jobs are not to have everybody internally necessarily on board as much as what the external customer needs. And so I think internally you have to focus on justifying, explaining what the brand you're building, but really go back to what Angela said, what is the customer needing to know, wanting to know about our brand? How do we reach them? Because we're already here. Yeah. We're already at Notre Dame. So we're really not the audience anymore. The audience is people who are not here. And we have to, for me, it's always keeping that in mind as we look at something. Is this going to be of interest to someone who's not already at Notre Dame? And how can we do that in a way that's true to the brand and true to what that customer needs?
Great point.
Outstanding. Thank you both. Thank you again to Peter Ashley and to Angela Bostick, today's Marketing Live guests, for joining us today and sharing some excellent insights. And thanks as always to our terrific sponsors of Marketing Live, M. Stoner and FormStack. Be sure to get reminders about this and other shows by subscribing to the Higher Ed Live newsletter. You can browse the archives at higheredlive.com or subscribe to the podcast on iTunes. I'll be back in October to preview the AMA Symposium for the Marketing of Higher Education. That will be our October 29th episode, so I hope you'll join us then. I'm Rob Zinkin. Thanks again for tuning in to Marketing Live on the Higher Ed Live Network.